In our number 10 spot, we have War of the Worlds. On Halloween Eve in 1938, people thought that aliens had come to Earth. This story is nuts. In 1938, way before movies and TV shows and radio programs became what they are today, 12 million people tuned into a radio program on CBS radio that declared that Martians have invaded New Jersey. It was a radio play called War of the Worlds by Orson Welles, who acted in it and wrote it. Very few people knew it was a play though, and it created mass hysteria. It is predicted that 1 in 12 people believed it to be real, approximately 1 million were terrified and ran out of their homes and panicked over an alien invasion. But honestly though, that must have been really scary to hear and not know what to do. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that like button because it really helps us out.
Now coming in at number 9 is Don't Touch My Candy, Halloween Day 2011. A 55-year-old man residing in Chicago realized at 2:30 p.m. that his bag of candy was missing. Call the police. Now I don't know if that's referring to his bag of candy that he got during trick-or-treating or the bag he was using to give candy to kids. I mean, you could be 50 and trick-or-treating. I'm not gonna judge you. Who am I to judge you? Either way, suddenly outraged by this realization, the man blamed his neighbor Maria Adams for stealing it even though she really didn't. The man grabbed a bunch of steak knives from his kitchen and headed to her house where he ended up stabbing her countless times. Maria desperately tried to defend herself by throwing plates at him, but it was just no use. She was in critical condition by the time she got to the hospital and ended up dying the next morning. The man was charged with first-degree murder and aggravated domestic battery. Can we just take a second please to just realize how ridiculous this is? Like, I simply just do not get it. He killed a woman over a bag of candy. Like, unless that bag had the secret of life in it or the elixir of immortality, it's just not that deep. Get a new bag. At number 8 we have The Disappearance, Halloween Day 1955. Mother of 2 Marilyn Dammann stopped at a food fair on Long Island to do a quick bit of shopping. She left 2-year-old Stephen and 7-month-old Pamela outside the store and told Stephen to watch his little sister. First of all, a 2-year-old cannot be left alone to watch anyone else. Like, that is still baby as hell. Like, what are you doing? 10 minutes later she came out and both children were nowhere to be found. Freaking the hell out, Marilyn starts looking everywhere and thankfully finds Pamela nearby, still in her stroller unharmed, but Stephen was still nowhere to be found. 5,000 people searched for him the next day, but detectives and police were never able to solve the case or find him. Honestly, I feel bad about it, I really do, but also you can't leave your kids alone ever, especially if they're that young. Like, a 2-year-old can't even defend themselves from anyone, how are they meant to defend their younger sibling as well? Like, Marilyn, you should have known better. 2 years old! What can you even do at 2 years old? Nothing! Can you even walk? No, you probably can. You know what I mean, it's young. Now filling on number 7 slot is The Note, Halloween Day 2012. Now Julie Keith was on her way to Kmart to buy some quick last-minute cheap Halloween decorations in her hometown of Damascus, Oregon. That was a lot to say in one breath. Either way, inside the graveyard kit that she purchased, she found a handwritten letter from an inmate at the Chinese labor camp that had made the kit. The letter pleads for the reader to send it to the World Human Rights Organization because thousands of people were suffering in China. The writer claimed that them, along with a lot of other workers in the Massanjia labor camp, were forced to work 15-hour days with no weekends or holidays. If they refused, they would get tortured or beat and only got paid 10 yuan a month, which is about $1.61 a month. A month! The letter wasn't signed, but Julie did pass it on to the organization and Kmart launched their own investigation into it as well. Thankfully, months later the labor camp was exposed and the inmates were freed. Woohoo, we love a happy ending! Now at number 6 is The Prank Gone Wrong, Halloween Day 1998. 21-year-old Carl Jackson was driving through the Bronx with his girlfriend to pick up her son from a Halloween party. While stopped at an intersection, a bunch of teenagers started throwing eggs at his car, and so he got out to confront them. No one's about to throw eggs at me when my girl's in the car. I'll front on them. I'll square up. That's me as Carl. Either way, one of the teens, 17-year-old Curtis Sterling, pulled out a handgun and straight up shot Carl in the head, killing him instantly. And egging people on Halloween is quite a common prank, but it's gone awry so many times. Curtis ended up being sentenced to 20 years in prison, and every year on Halloween he gets a card from Carl's mother saying, "I'm glad you're still there." And honestly, kudos to her, I would do the exact same thing. What a senseless, unnecessary killing. Like, I'm getting mad at this list, I really am. It's pissing me off. Coming in at number 5 is The Mailman, Halloween Day 2012. Halloween is always a lit time, it's very scary to the point some people claim they get scared to death. Exaggeration. Pussies. Now, a mailman in Denver was on his route making his deliveries and he showed up at one house that had a corpse decoration on its porch. Sort of annoyed at the placement of the decoration, he sort of sidestepped it out of the way to the side and delivered the mail. As he was walking away, he realized it wasn't a decoration from any angle. It was a real man that was dead. Turns out the dead man, Delport, had collapsed and died on his porch when returning from his night shift, but because of the timing of Halloween, it just didn't look sus. Honestly, you guys, imagine dying and someone thinking you're a Halloween decoration and just moving your body to the side. Like, biggest L I'd ever take, and I'm not even bloody alive. That's the biggest L. At number 4 is The Costume Gone Wrong. Wow, I need to think of better names because I already did Prank Gone Wrong. Sorry about that. Either way, Halloween Day 2012. An 8-year-old girl was so excited to dress up for Halloween in her hometown in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. She was at a relative's bonfire that night and went to play on the hillside when her aunt Janet saw her in the bushes. Assuming she was a skunk because of her black outfit, hat, and white tassel, she asked her son to shoot the pest. So Thomas went in and got the gun and shot the girl in the shoulder and abdomen. As soon as they realized the grave mistake that had happened, she was helicoptered to Pittsburgh Children's Hospital straight away. She remained in critical condition but did actually survive. What a close call. Like, oh my god, I would have never been able to live with that if I was Thomas or Janet. Like, killing my relative because I thought they were a skunk? Ugh, that would have been an even bigger L. Such an L. Filling at number 3 slot is Bad Candy, Halloween Day 1974. 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien was going trick-or-treating with his dad and sister in Pasadena, Texas. They got to a house where no one answered the door, and getting impatient, the kids ran off to the next house while their dad Ronald stayed behind. He re-emerged a few minutes later with a few pixie sticks, saying the person did come out and give it to him for his kids and their friends. They went home and Timothy had his pixie stick and started complaining that his stomach was hurting. Then he ran to the bathroom vomiting and convulsing and eventually went limp in his dad's arms and died on the way to the hospital. Turns out the pixie sticks he had a lethal dose of potassium cyanide in it. The police then went into panic mode trying to locate the other kids that had those same pixie sticks, and thankfully none of the other kids had ended up eating them, but they were all found with enough cyanide in them to kill 3 to 4 adults. In each one, not even all together. Ronald was never suspected until the investigation revealed he was over $100,000 in debt and could never hold down a job. He had 21 in the past few years. 21 jobs? What the hell? Turns out he had taken out a total of $60,000 worth of life insurance on his kids, which his wife was unaware of. He ended up killing his son to get the insurance and gave the candy to the other kids as well, just to lessen suspicion. You are complete and ultimate trash if you murder a family member, especially your own kid. Like, getting triggered. Stop getting triggered. Now at number 2 is Heads Will Roll, Halloween Day 2014. So Halloween decorations are always a good time, and that night a man was seen dragging a headless body out of his apartment and just leaving it on the street. Just casual, really. He came back out a few minutes later with the head and then proceeded to kick it to the other side of the street. And I know you're probably wondering what the hell onlookers thought of this, and most of them just thought it was a prank or that the man didn't want to use the decoration anymore. Either way, it was only an hour or so later when someone actually tried to move the body from the middle of the street did they realize the decoration wasn't a decoration. It was a real decapitated body. Turns out the body was Patricia Ward's and her murderer was her son, who had a history of mental illness. He decapitated her, left her body on the street, and then killed himself by jumping in front of a train. This just ended well for no one, not Patricia, not her son, and not the person who moved her body. Like, no. Not happily ever after. And finally, at number 1 is The Cradle Snatcher, Halloween Day 1977. George Carter had just put his 19-month-old Nima into her crib in their home in Oklahoma. The next morning, he woke up to find the child missing from her cradle, despite all the windows and doors being locked. It's believed the abductor was hiding in her closet that night and stuck the child out when the parents fell asleep. A month later, a group of kids playing in an abandoned house 4 blocks away from the Carter home were horrified when the decomposed body of an infant came tumbling out of the house house's fridge. That child ended up being Nima, but it doesn't even end there. Now, before the Carters lived in that house, it was home to another family that had 2 twin daughters. The year beforehand, the 3.5-year-old girls were stolen and lured out of their house in broad daylight. They were taken to a house by their frequent babysitter, 17-year-old Jacqueline Rubidoux, who told them to get in the fridge and that their aunt would come get them later for some ice cream. A few days later, cries were heard from the fridge by a few children playing in the house next door, so they went inside the house to find out what it was. One of the children opened the fridge door to find Tina jumping out at them. She had managed to stay alive by breathing through a hole in the fridge, but her twin had died from asphyxia. And you know who else called on Jacqueline to watch their child? Nima's parents. Tina even told officers that Jackie Boo was the one who took them to the house, but it failed to lead to a conviction because there was no physical evidence, despite her being shady as hell and the child literally identifying her. But let's just not believe her, shall I? Let's just not believe her.
Starting us off at number 10.
The disappearance of Cindy Song. Cindy was a university student who was doing what any university student would do on Halloween, and that was having fun at a party. She spent the night out with her friends, laughing and hanging out. Then she got a friend to drive her home to make sure that she got back safe. Her friend saw her walking into her apartment building, but that was the last time that anyone would ever see of her. The case was a mystery for a while, but then there was a lead. A man by the name of Hugo Marcus Zielinski was suspected in the kidnapping and murder of this poor girl. People say he worked with an accomplice to pull off this crime. Things really started to heat up when police investigated Zielinski's home, and they made a horrific discovery. They found a series of dead bodies in the backyard. One of the craziest parts of the story was when the person was suspected in helping Zielinski killed Cindy, they actually showed up dead in Zielinski's backyard. Then things got even crazier when Cindy's body was never found amongst the many things that were buried in Zielinski's property. This opened everything up, being a mystery once again.
In our number 9 spot, we have a fascist celebration. On Halloween in 1922, Mussolini, the Italian politician of the time, threw a party to celebrate the growing power of the fascist party. This happened in Rome with thousands of men who dressed in black shirts, which was a part of the party's uniform. The pictures are insane to see. I've said to myself that if I ever find myself in a place surrounded by hundreds or thousands of people all gathered for the same purpose or person, then I will ask myself, do I think like everyone else here? Have my thoughts been manipulated in some way to appeal to a core basic human need that we all need, which is to be accepted and to belong? I'm sure the answer to the last question will be yes, let's be real. Apparently it was this day that Mussolini violently took control of the government, which led him to becoming prime minister and then the dictator. This event became known as the March on Rome. So yeah, this is definitely some pretty crazy history for the Italians and certainly a terrifying event. In our number 8 spot, we have a terrifying prediction. Apparently, American serial killer David Berkowitz predicted a killing while inside the correctional facility that he was in, and no one, of course, paid attention to it and thought he was making up a story. Typical, but also he was a prisoner, which I'm sure most assumed to be clinically insane, so it makes sense why they wouldn't have listened. They didn't realize until Halloween morning in 1981 when 2 people named Elizabeth Platzman and Ronald Sisman, who were found dead in their Manhattan home, brutally killed. Apparently, Berkowitz described their apartment perfectly and said that a cult had carried out these killings. No one was ever able to find out who killed these people, so many believe Berkowitz's prediction to be true and believe that probably this cult was very powerful and that's why no one was ever found to be connected to the killings. I'm sure that happens way more than we think. In our number 7 spot, we have Nima Louise Carter. In 1977, on Halloween night, a 19-month-old by the name of Nima Louise Carter was stolen from her bed. The windows were locked, and so the parents believed that whoever took her was hiding in her closet. Almost a month later, she was found dead in a refrigerator in an abandoned home. Before this incident, 2 twins from nearby went missing and were found in a refrigerator, and they were believed to have been taken by a woman that ended up being Nima's babysitter. So eventually, with this new evidence, the babysitter by the name of Jacqueline Roubideau was given a life sentence in prison for the killings. In our number 6 spot, we have orange socks. This is a pretty wild story, but a little gruesome, so brace yourself. A woman in her 20s was killed on Halloween night in 1979. She was found severely injured and naked, but the only thing that was on her was orange socks. The police couldn't identify her, so that's how she was given the name Orange Socks. She was found just off of Interstate 35 outside of Georgetown, Texas, where it's possible that a notorious serial killer possibly was. I am referring to Henry Lee Lucas. He eventually confessed to the crime, stating that the girl's name was Joni or Judy. He was sentenced to death for it, but apparently he then retracted the confession in order to get his death sentence suspended. He was apparently notorious for admitting to crimes he didn't commit, so whether he did so or not still remains a mystery. In our number 5 spot, we have poisoned candy. Okay, this one might haunt your dreams a little, or at least make you weary about the candy you may eat going forward. There was a young human that went trick-or-treating one Halloween night, and after getting home and beginning to eat his candy, he passed out and died. He of course ate a piece of candy that was poisonous, and that's what killed him. But that's not the worst part. Apparently, this wasn't a fluke. This boy was poisoned by his own father. Apparently his father really needed money, and so he took this as an opportunity to cash out a life insurance policy that he had on his son. Yeah, that is definitely bone-chilling. I'm gonna be weary of the candy I eat for the rest of my life going forward now. In our number 4 spot, we have the Hilton surprise. On Halloween morning in 2004, a Hilton employee in Key West, Florida experienced the surprise of her life when she found a newborn dead in a garbage bag. Probably the most horrific thing I have ever heard. It still had its umbilical cord attached. Its mother was most likely a pregnant woman that was seen walking into the hotel with 3 men earlier that morning. A witness overheard moaning in the bathroom and asked if the woman was alright. All 3 of the males waited outside of the bathroom for her, and one of them even called out to her, calling her Samantha or Sonia. That's what the witness said. The woman was in the bathroom for about 40 minutes before she and the 3 men were escorted out by security. She apparently was holding her stomach in pain, but told the guard that she had been partying too hard the night before. She and the men were never found. In our number 3 spot, we have the tragedy on ice. On Halloween night 1963, in a skating rink in Indiana State Fairground Coliseum, Indianapolis, a tragedy occurred around 11 p.m. that night. It was apparently the last skating routine of the show when the concession stand exploded and the floors caved in, which caused a crater. Gas had been leaking from the concession stand, and that is what led to the explosion. 74 people died and 400 were injured from the event. It was said that the aftermath was a nightmare to see. I can only imagine. In our number 2 spot, we have Stephen Dammann. It was Halloween in 1955, and a woman by the name of Marilyn Dammann took her son Stephen and her daughter Pamela to a supermarket in East Meadow, New York. She left her son and daughter outside while she was shopping. It was the 50s, so I guess that was normal then. Comment below if you were alive then and can confirm that this was normal, because it doesn't seem normal. Especially if one of them is still in a stroller, and Stephen was. When she finally left the store, she discovered that they were missing. She eventually found her daughter, but she never found Stephen. Apparently during this time, it was common that people were taken by people that couldn't procreate, and they were given different names. Even still today, a body hasn't been found, and so it is believed that Stephen is out there somewhere, just living someone else's life. Whoa, imagine. In our number 1 spot, we have Harry Houdini's death. Okay, I know what you might be thinking, Melissa. Harry Houdini's death is not terrifying. No, I suppose not. I mean, perhaps for his family it might have been terrifying, but what could potentially be terrifying about his death is the possibility that he was actually magical. Out of the 365 days in a year that he could have passed away, of course it's on Halloween, the Day of the Dead, the witch's holiday, a magical night. I don't know, is this a coincidence? Possibly, but I think not. Some people think he was killed by the Spiritualists, an organization he would apparently try to debunk, but there's seemingly no proof of this.
Starting us off at number 10 is costume or reality. Halloween Day 1957. Betty Fabiano and her husband Peter were winding down and getting ready for bed when the doorbell rang. Despite it being past 11 p.m, they assumed that maybe it was a group of late night trick-or-treaters, and since they had some candy left, and so Peter went downstairs to answer the door and was greeted with a man wearing a mask. Betty heard some muffled voices downstairs, kind of like a man was impersonating a woman's voice, then a pop and then a thumb. She ran downstairs to discover Peter lying on the ground in a pool of blood with a gunshot wound on his chest. He died on the way to the hospital and suspects were hunted down immediately. Now here is like the biggest plot twist of plot twist history. Now the couple had their fair share of trouble, and while separated at one point, Betty started seeing a woman called Joan. That's not the plot twist, by the way. They decided to take another jab at their marriage, and Peter's only condition was that Betty could never see or speak about Joan again, to which she agreed. Joan obviously then had a motive and was questioned, and things she was saying just weren't adding up. She claimed that she was home all night, but neighbors claimed she left on a drive for a very long time. An anonymous tip led the police to the murder weapon, and then the assailant, 40-year-old Goldine Pizer. She admitted to killing Peter under the spell of a woman she was in love with, and that woman was Joan.
Coming in at number 9, we have the murder of Taylor Van Diest. But before I go any further, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out, so please do so. On Halloween night back in 2011, Taylor Van Diest left a party in Armstrong, Canada, but she never returned home. That was the last time anyone had seen her. What's freaky is that on her way home, she sent a text to her friends saying that she was being creeped on. She was later found dead by the side of railroad tracks. After running tests on the body, DNA of a man named Matthew Forrester was found under her fingernails. He later admitted that he had choked her and hit her on the head 6 times. One of the blows fractured her skull. She passed away a few hours later.
Coming in at number 8 is the murder of Carl Jackson. It's insane to think that something could escalate to this point. Carl Jackson was a simple working man and very young. He was only 21 years old at the time of his murder. He was driving on Halloween night to go to a party. The thing was, he wasn't even going to party. He was going to pick up his girlfriend's son from the party. This guy was just trying to be a good dude. On his way, there were some teenagers who pulled a Halloween trick on him. They hit his car with eggs, and Jackson was obviously angry about this and got out of his car and started screaming at the kids. This makes perfect sense. They just egged your car, and that can really screw up the paint job. Well, I guess one of these teenagers didn't like that he got mad. I don't know what their thought process was, but after Jackson got back into his car, he walked up and shot Jackson. The teenager was later caught and sentenced. I don't know where you get off. You egged a guy's car, you're in the wrong, and because he gets mad you think you can kill him? I'm so happy this kid got caught.
And coming in number 7, we have Liddell Peoples. Honestly, my favorite part of Halloween has to be the candy. Let me know what your favorite thing to get on Halloween. I hated getting like Diet Coke. Like, it's so heavy, and it's like the first couple houses and you gotta carry that around. Well, there's one person that loves her Halloween candy a little bit too much. In fact, he would kill for it. This is a man named Liddell Peoples. In 2011, people bought himself several bags of sweets to snack on, but one of the bags went missing, and things turned deadly. He started to blame his acquaintance, Maria Adams, thinking she stole the bag. Things got escalated, and he ended up stabbing her multiple times. He was immediately arrested, all because of candy. Is this real life right now? This dude must have a serious sweet tooth.
Making our way down the list at number 6, we have the smiley face murders. It was Halloween night and Christopher Jenkins had just left a party, but was not done celebrating. As a result, he hit up a bar with his girlfriend and friends. But sometime after midnight, Chris became separated from the group and got kicked out of the bar. Since his costume had no pockets, his girlfriend was holding onto his wallet and phone. On top of that, he got a drive to the bar, so he had no way to get home. What happened next, no one truly knows. Chris was missing for 4 months until his body was found floating in the Mississippi River. To this day, his death is undetermined. No one knows what truly happened to him. One theory is that he was the victim of the smiley face murders, a group of killers that target college-aged white men. All of these victims are found drowned and with a smiley face graffitied nearby. Even though no smiley face was found, some people think that this was still a possibility. Another theory is that he found out that his girlfriend was cheating on him with a married man and threatened to expose him. In fact, the man she was cheating on him with was a police officer. So as a police officer, covering up a murder is on the easier side. Who knows? This case is still a huge mystery though.
Coming in at number 5 is the Pasadena gang shootings. Members of the Bloods wanted to settle a beef in Pasadena and thought that Halloween night would be the perfect opportunity to get the revenge. They drove up on a group of teenagers who were walking out of a party and they started firing into the crowd. People scattered, but these Bloods members were still able to hit several people in the crowd. After the dust settled, 3 people were injured and another 3 were killed. The police investigated after everything was said and done, and it turned out that these gang members actually hit up the wrong party. So these guys rolled up and shot dead a bunch of teenagers who didn't have anything to do with anything they were doing. It's very sad to think about.
In our 4th spot, we have the Angry Marine. Back in 2012 on Halloween night, Daniel Priority, a US Army veteran, was sitting in his wheelchair waiting in line at a restaurant. He was wearing his old Army uniform as he had done every day on Halloween, but 22-year-old Christopher Dabney, a US Marine, thought that Daniel's uniform and wheelchair were fake. He thought that his costume were making fun of injured Army veterans. Well, this enraged him and he ended up punching him twice, knocking him out of his wheelchair completely. It wasn't until later he realized, oh crap, like he's not getting up. I think it's a real situation happening. He definitely needs the use of his wheelchair. I mean, yeah, you messed up big time.
In our 3rd spot, we have Peter Fabiano. Back in 1957, 30-year-old couple Peter and Betty Fabiano had just got into bed when they heard the doorbell ring. Thinking that it was more trick-or-treaters, Peter grabbed a bowl of candy and opened the door. But standing at the door was a woman wearing a mask. She shot Peter in the chest and fled the scene. Later, it was revealed that a woman named Joan Rabble was responsible for this murder. Joan apparently was having a relationship with Peter's wife, Betty. Peter realized his wife was having an affair, and so Betty called it off with Joan. Joan then convinced another woman, Goldine Pizer, to shoot Peter for her. They were both eventually charged with 2nd-degree murder and were sentenced to 5 years to life in prison.
Coming in at number 2 is dressing the part. Back in 2013, Anthony Seabury would be shot and killed by someone who seemed to be a random individual. A few people saw the murder take place, and what made this murder grab headlines wasn't so much that it happened on Halloween, but that it happened on Halloween and that the killer was apparently wearing a mask from the horror movie Scream. It's thought that the killer could have been someone who fantasized about murder from watching horror movies, and when Halloween came around, he saw this as the perfect opportunity to hunt someone down and live out their fantasy. To this day, the person who killed Anthony Seabury has not been caught and could still be on the loose.
And coming in our number 1 spot on this list, we have the Candyman Killer. What a name. Back in 1974, Timothy O'Brien was all ready and excited to go trick-or-treating. He was probably so excited to see the city and get all the candy that he can handle. Little did he know that his dad was evil. Timothy's dad, Ronald, gave him a bunch of candy for him to eat. They were all pixie sticks. You guys remember those things? Those like straw things, you like squeeze it and then down it in like 2 seconds and then you eat like 50 more of them. Sadly, his dad laced them with cyanide. Timothy ate the sticks while he was out trick-or-treating, and he later passed out. An investigation was launched and eventually this was traced back to Timothy's father, Ronald. But now the question stood on why did Ronald poison his own kid? Was it meant for other kids? What on earth would bring a parent to do such a thing if that was his true intent? Ronald O'Brien was so deep in debt that he took a huge life insurance policy out on his kids and planned to kill them off so he can get the money for them. So the intentions was there. I mean, like, there are so many other ways to make money, and of course he got caught and now he's not getting any money.